Emily Thompson met James Anderson again at the scenic overlook near a local chapel, which was at an altitude of about 11,000 feet, equivalent to 3,800 meters in the original. The bus ride from a local area similar to Deaching to a place like Dechin took the whole afternoon. The winding mountain road made her feel dizzy, she was drowsy. After getting off the bus, she had only slept for a few hours when the enthusiastic innkeeper knocked on her door and woke her up. "Ms. Thompson, you can't go to bed without dinner. It's easy to get altitude sickness." She had no choice but to put on her clothes and go out to find something to eat. The tourist-filled area similar to Shangri-La was less crowded at night. The small town like Dechin became even more serene. The stars stretched across the sky, and the Milky Way seemed so low that it was almost within reach. The only bright light in sight came from a pizza place just a few steps away. Without thinking much, she pushed the door open and went in. A burst of noise greeted her. Before the owner could greet her, a familiar voice reached her ears. A girl was being stubborn, saying naively and insistently, "I want to complain. Why has the pizza been in the oven for so long and still isn't cooked?" The owner said earnestly, "Miss, I really can't control how long it takes for the pizza to be cooked. You prepared the ingredients. You tell me you can't decide after I paid." The owner was at a loss for words. Emily stood there and watched for a while, closed her eyes to calm down, and then opened them. The high-altitude wind was strong, and she felt a bit of a headache. But also a bit amused mostly, though. She was relieved, after traveling far and wide, after searching for so long. It turned out to be so easy to meet him here. "Hey, miss, you, James." She walked over and called him before the girl could start arguing with the owner. The young man had a handsome face. His hair was a bit messy from the wind, and his ears were red from the cold. But he smiled gently. "This place is at an altitude of 11,000 feet. The air is thin, and the boiling point of water is only about 176 F, equivalent to 80-something degrees Celsius in the original. If you keep baking like this, you won't be able to cook the pizza even if you dry out the oven." The owner blushed with excitement. "Yes, exactly." James looked up and saw the young woman. He was so surprised that he almost dropped his plate. He rubbed his eyes again and again, feeling incredible. "Am I dreaming? Emily, what are you doing here?" The young man looked at her for a long time. After a while, he smiled and said, "Maybe it's because I missed you so much that God heard me. They say that this place is close to heaven, and God can hear." The night was thick, and the starry sky was vast outside the window. The tall young man stood in front of her. His eyes were as beautiful as an ocean, and his affection was more charming than the surrounding scenery. Emily was stunned for a long time. She sniffed and then smiled. "Don't lie to me. I won't be fooled again." She looked at him seriously and said word by word, "James, the first swear to God. I don't like you anymore. Really." 8 years ago. Emily would never have said such a thing so firmly. After all, at that time, everyone in their school knew that Emily from class 9 liked James from class 3. She adored him so much that she was afraid he would get hurt. She even wished she could pick a star from the sky for him to show her love. Everyone was touched, except the person involved. James was indifferent. His personality was like that, and he didn't treat Emily much differently. So even though the girl chased after him every day without giving up, all he left her with was an ambiguous back. So she started to take an indirect approach when it was class 3's turn to be on duty at the school gate on Monday. Emily deliberately got up 20 minutes late. She stood outside the school gate, jumping up and down with a paper bag in her hand. "James, James." The young man turned around and saw the girl's bright smile. "I overslept. Could you secretly open the gate and let me in?" James opened his clipboard with a snap. "I'll deduct points for being late." "Please don't. Look, I bought you breakfast. You're on duty and don't have time to eat breakfast, right?" James frowned. "I don't want it." The morning sun was warm. The young man's face was bathed in the rising sun, and his slightly pursed lips were also tinged with warmth. Besides being handsome, he was full of vitality. Emily, who was leaning on the gate, was fascinated, but also a bit frustrated. But then she thought that James had said 7 words to her. which was already a quarter of a quatrain. Thinking like this, she was very encouraged. So, following this idea, she cheerfully ran to the bike shed and removed the valve core of James's bike. When James came to get his bike, it was almost dark. The setting sun was on the verge of setting. He always came earliest and left latest. After a long time, the bike shed attendant remembered him. She tried to recall seriously. This afternoon, there was a girl. She was very pretty, like a snow-white doll. I didn't notice what she was doing. When I wanted to ask, she was gone. Noticing James's gradually darkening expression, the attendant quickly added with a smile, "Oh, it's no big deal if the tire is flat. Just get it fixed. It might not be the girl who did it." "Thank you," James interrupted her, smiled, and swallowed his long sigh. Since the bike couldn't be ridden, he had to push it out of the school.at this time. The rush hour had passed. Without the bustling school-run vehicles, the figure standing under the tree, looking around, became very conspicuous. James quietly turned a corner to avoid her, but was still seen. The girl rushed towards him excitedly, holding a cup of hot coffee. He stepped back to avoid her, and she missed. Seeing that she was about to fall, he quickly reached out to catch her. "What are you doing?" Emily staggered and stood still. She smiled and said, "I'm here to bring you something to drink. It's so cold. Are you still riding your bike?" James's eyes swept over her. After a while, he said lightly, "The bike has a flat tire." Emily's eyes lit up. "That's great. Let's take the bus together. I've already checked the route. Your house is just one stop after mine. We can take the same bus." The girl's eyes were clear, like a clever reindeer of Santa Claus. Emily, as she happily pushed his bike back, with the traffic and lights flowing in her peripheral vision, he said slowly, "Don't do this in the future." She didn't hear the last sentence. After leaving the bike in the shed, James silently followed Emily to the bus stop. The bus was crowded. Emily was like a little red ball, nimbly squeezing into the crowd. She didn't stop until she bumped into someone. Then James frowned and grabbed her. "Find a place to stand." She obediently stopped and grabbed the handrail. A middle-aged man who got on the bus later squeezed next to her with a briefcase. His breath hit her face directly. Emily had nowhere to avoid, and her head hit the glass with a bang. As she was groaning in pain, James's arm came over. "Excuse me, could you please make some room?" The man glanced at him and reluctantly moved to another handrail. Emily was both surprised and happy. The young man's presence surrounded her. She could smell a faint lemon scent, and her ears suddenly felt hot for no reason, like someone trying to hide something. Emily buried her head and played with the tassels of his scarf, asking in a low voice with excitement, "Can we go to and from school together every day from now on?" "No." James refused firmly. "Taking the bus is easy to make us late," Emily blurted out. "Then after you fix your bike, you can just give me a ride to and from school. Anyway, our parents know each other. They won't mind. Maybe my mom will even be more relieved." But they had been childhood friends for so many years, and she had mentioned this many times. But James had never agreed. This time was no exception. The young man said indifferently, "No." "Why? You're too heavy. I can't carry you." "Hey." Emily jumped up angrily, pretending to step on his foot. James quickly lifted his leg and stepped back, but bumped steadily into someone. "I'm sore," he quickly apologized. When he turned around, he froze. The person he bumped into was a sneaky-looking young man. His hand, which he hadn't had time to retract, was in mid-air, holding James's wallet. James was stunned. He touched his backpack and found that the zipper had been pulled all the way open. It was Emily who reacted first. "Catch the thief." The man immediately bent down and turned to run, but there were too many people on the bus. Before he could push through the crowd, he was caught. Seeing Emily's fierce look, he smiled and pleaded, I'm a first-timer. I'll return the wallet. Please let me go." "Okay, just let him go like that." "No way." "No, I'm calling the police." James frowned and was about to stop her, but she had already dialed the number. So they had to go to the police station to make a statement. When they came out of the police station, it was completely dark. The cold night sky was high, with a few scattered stars twinkling. Emily stretched comfortably. "Great. I feel like I did a good deed today." James's eyebrows furrowed slightly, just as he was about to say something. He saw several people in the shadows under the corner exchanging glances and approaching them with weapons. His pupils suddenly constricted. He grabbed Emily and turned to run. Run. Ah! Emily didn't react in time and was dragged away by the young man like the wind. Many years later, she still couldn't forget that night. The lights of thousands of houses in the distance flickered on and off. The young man's palm was warm. Holding her hand and running in the night, she looked up in a hurry and saw his fair chin and the vast starry sky. For a moment, everything seemed to quiet down. And she thought she was running towards an eternal distance with him. However, as they were running, he suddenly fell down. When James woke up, Emily was sitting by the bedside, with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, James. The first forgot that you're not in good health and can't do strenuous exercise." James felt a headache. What kind of strange description was that? "You." He tried to clear the double vision in front of him and interrupted her. "I just had low blood sugar. I'm not going to die." As he was about to lift the quilt and get out of bed, he was stopped by James's mother, who arrived in time. "Jimmy, the doctor suggests you stay in the hospital for a few days for observation." James frowned subconsciously. Emily saw it and quickly encouraged him. "Don't frown. I'll be with you. You won't be bored in the hospital." James's mother smiled and rubbed her head. "Then I'll leave Jimmy to you. Emily, take good care of him in the future." "Of course," Emily said energetically. "Auntie, don't worry. As long as I'm here, no one will ever dare to bully him." The room was as bright as day, and the starry sky was outside the window. When James looked up, he met Emily's eyes. Her pupils were purely black, like a pitch-black night, making people unconsciously look forward to the dawn. Unfortunately, they were too young at that time and didn't know how far forever was. During James's stay in the hospital, Emily was on high alert. She rushed to the hospital every day after school, bringing different snacks each day. Today it was chocolate chip cookies. Tomorrow it was strawberry mousse. And the day after tomorrow it was caramel popcorn. James sat by the window reading a book. His fingers holding the spine of the textbook were white in the sunlight, like smooth jade. He always said coolly, "How many pounds do you want to make me gain?" Emily didn't know what to say, so she just held her face and smiled at him. "In the future, I'll definitely prepare a lot of snacks for you and carry them with you. Then, even if you have low blood sugar, you won't faint again." "Emily," James put down the book and reminded her. "There's less than a month until the final exam." "I know. Anyway, no matter what, we'll still be in the same school in the future." Emily had always had good grades, so she didn't care. "Do you want the recent class notes? Although the review outlines of our two classes are different, I can borrow the ones from your class for you." James didn't say anything, and Emily took it as his agreement. Emily knew that several girls in class 3 had a crush on James. But she also thought that hiding one's feelings and secretly competing was a behavior that was looked down upon. So when borrowing the notes and being sneered at by the girls with, "Who are you?" to James, she unceremoniously retorted, "If you're so capable, go find him. He's staying in room 803 of the city hospital. If it weren't for none of you sending him notes, would I have to make this trip?" The girls were silenced, but as soon as she left class 3, Emily couldn't help but feel. This emotion was sudden and intense, and she couldn't suppress it. Perhaps because her feelings were exposed, she could no longer deceive herself. James had never accepted or responded to her feelings. After a day of absent-minded classes, she listlessly went to find James with the notes. Before entering the room, she suddenly stopped, practiced a smile in front of the mirror, and then pushed the door open. But as soon as she entered, she froze. The young man was sitting by the window reading a book as usual. He was holding a pink-covered notebook that obviously didn't belong to him, and the owner of the notebook was sitting in Emily's usual seat, holding an apple, smiling gently, and occasionally reminding James of the key points. The soft sunset filled the space between them, as if they had been close for a long time and no outsider could break in. Emily remembered her. She was the study monitor of class 3, named Lily Brown, probably because of the ugly expression on her face. Lily seemed to sense something and looked up. She smiled and greeted. "Emily, you're here too. Come and sit down." "You're sitting in my place. Where should I sit?" Emily bit her lip and didn't move. She suddenly felt very uncomfortable. She didn't understand. What exactly was she to James? James was soon discharged from the hospital. It was late May. And the final exam was approaching. Emily no longer pestered him every day like before. She used a calendar to count down the days until the start of the new semester when she could see him again, but it seemed that God was deliberately mocking her overconfidence. This time, Emily missed the chance to enter the same school as James by 1 point. The two schools were far apart. It was no longer as easy for her to see him as it was in junior high school. He was always busy. And often the chat would end abruptly when his profile picture turned gray. Emily felt that her heart had been buried in the dust. But no flower could bloom. At Christmas, she went to find James with a gift as she did every year. Teenage boys changed a lot during puberty. In just a few months, he had grown much taller. She saw him saying goodbye to Lily at the school gate. When he passed by Emily, he was slightly stunned and then raised his hand to say hello. Emily. There was no surprise in the young man's eyes. This winter was really cold. Just taking her hands out of her pockets made her shiver involuntarily. Here. This is your Christmas gift. James didn't take the box. I don't want it. It was always like this. Every year, but with her emotions pent up for so long. Emily's hand hung in the air. She was so wrong that she wanted to cry. James hesitated. His hand in his windbreaker pocket was halfway out and then went back. He looked at the sky and pretended not to notice her on the verge of falling tears. It's getting late. I'll walk you home. Emily wanted to refuse him angrily, shake him off and tell him she didn't need his pity. But her legs didn't listen. She obediently followed him. How disappointing. She buried her face in her scarf and thought silently. The streetlights above were dim. A cat ran through the alley and knocked over a trash can. James broke the silence. I heard from your mom that you're not good at biology. Emily lowered her head and kicked a small stone. Yeah. She was naturally smart. She used to be able to get good grades without studying much. But high school courses were more difficult than expected. And she felt a bit overwhelmed. Do you want to study with me? Huh? What? Emily was stunned. I know a biology teacher who is really good. I'm planning to sign up for his advanced class. Do you want to come too? Emily was so excited that she couldn't sleep all night. She hugged the white teddy bear on her bed. It was a gift that James had rejected 3 years ago at Christmas. She kept thinking, was this his response? Was he implying that he didn't want her to fall behind and that he wanted her in his future life? Emily had never looked forward to the weekend so much, but it seemed that God was deliberately playing. Emily had never been so eager for the weekend, but it seemed as if fate was deliberately playing tricks on her that day. She wore her favorite coat and arrived at the tutoring classroom early, taking a front row seat and waiting for him. She waited from the start of the class until it ended. Even after all the other students left one by one, she still didn't see James. She ran up to ask the tutor. The tutor smiled and told her, "You're in the basic class. But James is in the advanced class. Their classroom is not this one, it's next door." Suddenly realizing this, Emily felt her cheeks heat up. She was here to attend the class, not to see James. After thanking the teacher, she put on her backpack and walked out. Before turning the corner of the corridor, she saw two figures walking out of the adjacent classroom, one in front of the other. Startled for a moment, Emily immediately hid behind a pillar. James walked in front, saying in a twitchy whisper, "Are you done yet?" Lily looked up and sneered. "Then you make it clear. We're in the middle of class. What are you doing?" "Me. You should explain why you begged the teacher to add a basic class and went to so much trouble to help Emily with her studies." James was silent for a long time, then said, "My mom just asked me to take care of her. Don't think too much about it." Leaning against the pillar, Emily thought desperately that this was really the last straw. She decided she would never like James again. Emily began to study harder than ever before. She was naturally talented in learning. Once she put her heart into it, she quickly ranked among the top 3 in her grade. Her teacher thought she had the potential for competitions, so she was sent to the advanced class for the high school biology competition. She didn't expect to meet Lily again. It seemed that half a year had passed since their last meeting. Compared to her previous gentle and docile aura, Lily's features had become more defined, and she was even more dazzling. The teacher asked her to come to the front to answer a question. The girl stood in the scattered sunlight, her face fair, confident but not showy. Like a flower slowly blooming, Emily lowered her head and scribbled on the paper with a pencil. Not wanting to be recognized unexpectedly, the teacher called on her next. Emily, Lily's solution is too complicated. You come up with a simpler one. Emily's face turned pale. She was stunned for a long time before slowly walking to the front. After answering the question in a daze, she put down the chalk and stiffly sat back in her seat. All the while, she was thinking if Lily was here. Was James here too? If he was, what should she do? Don't worry, James isn't here, Lily whispered with a giggle. As if reading her mind. I'm here alone. He doesn't participate in the biology competition. Emily turned around, shocked. How are you sitting behind me? You were too focused. I noticed you as soon as I came in, Lily replied, propping her head up and smiling at her. I saw you were burying your head in the questions and didn't want to disturb you. Anyway, hey, she whispered, getting closer. Your method is so much simpler than mine. I'll count on you to teach me how to solve problems from now on. Little teacher. The last 3 words were spoken softly and sweetly. Emily blushed for no reason. Why don't you ask James to explain it to you? Aren't you too? Lily blinked, stunned for a moment, then burst out laughing. No, we're nothing. I used to like him, but he didn't like me. After a while, I didn't want to like him anymore. Besides, he doesn't like someone as great as me. It's his loss. She shrugged and smiled. Isn't that how it is? It's like giving a gift. If you don't want it, I'll give it to someone else. Emily was stunned for a long time. No one had ever said such things to her. In this world, every profession requires talent. Learning needs talent. Doing experiments needs talent. And getting along with people needs talent. But what about love? No one had ever told her how to love someone. After a long time, her expression softened little by little, just because of that one sentence. She became friends with Lily many years later. Emily still marveled at the way and speed at which girls formed friendships. She was also glad to have met a carefree girl like Lily. After admitting that she still liked James under Lily's repeated questioning, Lily excitedly encouraged her to confess during a festival. Since he asked the biology teacher to add a basic class in our freshman year, I thought he was different to you. James is a bit of a contradiction. If you ask him more, maybe he'll admit it. Emily buried her face in her scarf and called James. Her ears are it was Christmas again. Even if it was just an excuse to hear his voice. Emily realized that they hadn't been in touch for so long. After a long beep, a clear male voice came from the other end. Hello, James, Emily said softly. Merry Christmas. James was silent for a moment, then said, yeah. The college entrance exam is coming up soon. Which college do you want to go to? Her breath condensed into a frost in the air. Seeing that he didn't answer, she added, James, the first want to study in the north. Do you want to? Emily, what's the point of this? James interrupted her. The girl was stunned. She heard the boy continue. I don't want to be with you. Not in the past. Not in the future. Why don't you understand that yet? The street trees were hung with small colored lights, and cheerful Christmas carols were playing in the stores. Children dressed as Santa Claus were running and playing in the street. The whole world seemed full of joy, but Emily only felt cold. Her heart seemed to fall from the sky, causing a huge crash in her world. Goodbye. Those were the last 2 words James said to her. On Christmas of her 18-year-old year, Emily cried in Lily's arms for half the night. Lily comforted her tenderly. It's okay. It really is. You'll have a completely different life from his in the future. You'll be fine without him. Love wasn't something that hard work could guarantee. So Emily's 18-year-old wish was to never like James again. Lily was right about at least one thing that year. Emily, who already had good grades, performed exceptionally well in the college entrance exam and got into a top-tier university. Meanwhile, James directly gave up the college entrance exam and went abroad with the help of his family. On the day she received the admission notice, Emily thought silently that indeed, their lives would be different from then on. Before leaving, she invited her friends to a farewell dinner. After much hesitation, she also invited James. But until the end of the dinner, the chat record still showed her question. Will you come? It looked so lonely and silly. She exited the chat interface and boarded a plane heading north. In the north, the Four Seasons were distinct, and college life was much more relaxed and interesting than before. Emily focused on the subjects she was interested in. She was hardworking, serious, and talented, and soon became well known among the professors in her department. Whenever there was a new project, they would think of her first. So, at the end of her sophomore year, Emily packed her bags and went to the southwest, planning to join a high-altitude seed laboratory before departure. There was a physical fitness test on the playground. The wind blew the bangs on the girl's forehead. Looking at the red plastic track, Emily suddenly remembered the 800-meter run in junior high school. Physical education was also included in the total score of the final exam in junior high school. The teachers asked everyone to aim for a full score, but she was not good at sports and could never run the 800-meter in less than 3 minutes and 38 seconds. Every time James timed her, she would lean on her knees, panting and smiling. "I always feel so motivated when I see you. How about you stand at the finish line with your arms open for me during the exam?" James would roll his eyes at her and say, "Ridiculous." But on the day of the official exam, he really stood by the track waiting for her, while everyone else stood at the finish line. He stood at the last 100-meter mark and shouted at her, who was losing steam, "If you don't speed up in the last 100 meters, you won't get a full score." At that moment, everything seemed quiet. She could only hear her heavy breathing. Under the gray sky, the young man stood tall and straight. Like a ray of light breaking through the clouds, Emily managed to cross the finish line with difficulty. Habitually, she turned around to look. The red track was empty, and the sunlight fell quietly. Finally, she couldn't hold back anymore. She covered her face and burst into tears. Ryan, who was looking for her with a code in his hand, was shocked when he saw her tear-stained face as she turned around. The tall boy, over 6 feet tall, was flustered by a girl for the first time. He quickly looked for tissues to wipe her tears. What are you crying for? How could you cry while running?" Emily stopped crying and laughed. "Big monitor, why are you stuttering all of a sudden?" Ryan looked at her without speaking. After a while, his ears turned slightly red, and he shifted his gaze away suspiciously. As Hugo said, "The first sign of true love in a girl is boldness, and in a boy, it is timidity." Before leaving, Ryan became Emily's boyfriend. She thought this life was pretty good. Ryan was considerate and had a good temper. He would put a coat on her when she fell asleep by accident, explain the problems she couldn't solve, and hold her hand as they took walks. What's more, they had similar hobbies and the same major. They could do research together now. Enjoy buy one get one free shaved ice, and look forward to a future full of time spent together. Everything seemed perfect until she met James again on the high-altitude plateau. At an altitude of about 11,000 feet, the past rushed back like a hurricane, blowing through her heart. She thought she had become strong enough, but her heart still ached after Emily firmly said, "I don't like you anymore." James was actually amused. "That's not what I meant. I just wanted to see an old friend, so I came to find you." She kept a wary distance from him. "You came all the way to a place at 11,000 feet to visit an old friend?" James just smiled slightly and didn't answer. After dinner, he insisted on walking her back to her place. The cold wind on the plateau blew into her collar. Emily's hands trembled as she tried to tie her scarf. When he tried to help, she stepped back and dodged. His outstretched hand hung in the air for a long time. Then he casually withdrew it. "Afraid of me?" Emily shook her head. "I have a boyfriend." James was startled, then thought she was just being stubborn. "Do you like him more than me?" "There's no comparison," Emily said, pinching the collar of her coat and walking forward without even glancing at him. "He's the one I can spend my life with." James opened his mouth, then fell silent. When they reached her place, he found that she lived right next door to him. Pointing at the door, James smiled. "Call me if you need anything." "I won't," she said, and slammed the door shut. That night, it was James who had an accident that he didn't sleep well. He woke up groggily once and found that his throat hurt so much that he couldn't speak. Then he realized he had a high fever. He quickly called the front desk. The innkeeper rushed up to take his temperature, then knocked on every guest's door, asking if anyone had a car. He earnestly explained that a guest had altitude sickness and begged the self-driving guests to give him a ride to the hospital wrapped in a coat. James leaned against the headboard, feeling drowsy. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the approaching dawn through the window. The sky on the plateau was a clear blue. Eagles circled tirelessly around the snow-capped mountains. The blue and white merged, pure and cold, just before passing out. He thought, so this is the sky Emily has been seeing all this time. It seemed like a long time had passed. Yet it also felt like he had just closed his eyes for a moment when James woke up again. He was in the hospital. The first thing he saw was the girl sitting by his bedside. He was a bit dazed, as if the years hadn't passed at all, and she was still sitting next to him, excitedly saying she would protect him. You're awake. James came to his senses. Seeing Emily let out a sigh of relief. She said, it's okay now that you're awake. You'll gradually get better. She stood up to get her coat. I left in a hurry this morning. I'll go back and pack your things. You stay here for a while. Emily. James coughed softly and stopped her. You still like me, don't you? Emily's hand stopped as she was reaching for the coat. She was so angry that she laughed. Are you crazy? I told you Why do you still habitually keep a piece of candy in your pocket? Is it since you found out I have low blood sugar? The young man looked at her persistently. His face pale. Emily was about to retort when a soft laugh came from the door. Well, James looked up and saw a tall and smiling young man. Ryan walked in and said with a smile, sorry to interrupt, but I put the candy in Emily's pocket because she likes it. And I'm the one who drove you to the hospital this morning. I also carried you from the inn to the car. I hope you don't misunderstand my girlfriend. James fell silent. His lips pressed into a thin line that he watched as Ryan walked towards Emily with long strides, helped her fasten her scarf, and softly whispered, asking if she wanted to take 2 days off to stay and take care of a friend. James felt like laughing. In the end, he was the outsider, the one who didn't belong in Emily's world. Tibet is close to Shangri-La. Emily had come out for a weekend trip and didn't expect to meet James in Dechin. Seeing that he wasn't seriously ill and with the laboratory waiting for her to return, she hesitated. I don't think so. Ryan rubbed her head. Then you go back first. I'll stay here, it's the same. James let out a long, bitter laugh and interrupted them. Don't worry about me. Just go. Guys always understand each other. Ryan was silent for a moment, then patted Emily. I'll wait for you outside. The girl nodded obediently, saw him out, and only came back after a while. Do you have anything else to say to me? Yes. There were thousands of words, but so many words were stuck in his throat, and he couldn't say them at the moment. James looked at her. After a long while, he smiled. You've always wanted to know if I ever liked you, right? Emily opened her mouth, about to speak, when he slowly said, never. Emily, he said, I've never had feelings for you. The sky on the plateau was clear and blue, with huge clouds scurrying across the sky. The sunlight in the room flickered, and it seemed like a long time had passed in an instant after being stunned for a long time. Emily also laughed. James, is it fun to trample on someone else's feelings? You won't even give me a single good memory. Why do you think I'll keep liking you? As soon as she said this, Emily was slightly taken aback. She suddenly realized that she finally understood Lily. She had always thought she was different from Lily, thinking that she could love someone without asking for anything in return. But in the end, she was no different. She also wanted to be loved tenderly and have sweet memories. Love was never a one-sided thing. But James wouldn't even give her memories. The sunlight poured in, making the girl's eyes clear. She looked at him across the 8-year gap and said word by word, you said that because of the high altitude here. God can hear. I swear to God that I'll move forward and never look back. In the dazzling morning light, after a long time, James slowly repeated in a low voice, swear to God. Praying for God's forgiveness because he had been lying to God all along. James was diagnosed with Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome in his 3rd year of junior high school. Many people are born with heart diseases, and the probability of an attack is 1 in 10 million. Unfortunately, he was the one who got it. He wasn't an optimistic person, but he had faith in modern medicine, since it was a curable disease. He didn't worry about it at first, until Emily caught a thief on the bus and called the police to send the thief to the police station. It was like knocking down the first domino. He knew that the thieves on the bus were part of a gang. It wasn't that simple to solve the problem just by catching one. When they walked out of the police station, he wanted to explain it to her. But when he saw Emily's pure and innocent eyes, he couldn't say anything. He could only run away with her. That night, he held the girl's hand and ran through the brightly lit streets, trying to shake off the thief's accomplices. The lights passed by in a blur. The girl gasped and asked him where they were going. After running across several streets, he suddenly felt lost. Yes, where was he taking her? It was the first time someone had chased after him to say they liked him during his adolescence. Of course, he was so happy that he didn't know what to do. But given Emily's personality, where should he take her? How could he become a strong person and protect her passion and determination? So James let go of her hand and started running away alone. Running away from Emily, time proved that his choice was right. Emily was more pure than he had imagined. And pure-hearted people were often insightful and intelligent. Whatever opportunities he could create for her, she would seize and shine. But the more dazzling she became, the more he dared not get close. The cowardice of his adolescence had wrapped his heart like a thick cocoon. He didn't want to take that step, so he could only choose to stay away, letting go of her hand again and again, and he justified it by saying, "I'm sick. How could I drag her down?" The first person who saw through this was Lily. The girl made a bet with him. If she could convince Emily to confess her love to him, he would get one last chance to make a choice. But when Emily's voice reached his ears, he remembered a long time ago when they sat on the parallel bars, looking at the stars. She asked him, "What's your dream?" He kept a straight face and didn't answer. She just giggled and said, "I want to be a great female hero and save the world in the future." The world was cold-hearted, but she was warm-hearted and kind. She was the most unrestrained one, yet also the one who most deserved to be protected. In the end, she was naive, sincere, and the one who could love others with an unquenchable heart. But he couldn't break free from his own cage. He didn't know how to walk side by side with someone for a lifetime. To avoid risks, he avoided all possibilities of starting a relationship. By the time he grew up enough to stand beside her, she had already gone far ahead. The problem that had troubled him for years was finally solved by Ryan's smile. A girl like her deserved to be protected and cherished. It was just that their growth rates were different, so they could never be on the same wavelength. James fell asleep on the plateau. When he woke up again, the ward was empty. Meeting Emily again seemed like a dream. He looked at the blue sky outside the window. It was as if time had turned back to the day he first met her. A group of elementary school students were competing in reciting poems. The study monitor pointed at James and said that any poem with his name in it had a negative connotation, like flowers bloom and fade, with endless sorrows, and, in others' hearts, there are mountains and seas of separation. He was not good at arguing and couldn't defend himself. It was Emily who jumped up and retorted defiantly, "How ignorant. There's clearly Lu Yu's long lovesickness." She turned to look at him, smiling brightly. "Clouds layer upon layer. Waters layer upon layer. I'm in the midst of layers of clouds and waters." The sunlight shone down. After all these years, he remembered the second half of the poem. "When the moon is bright, I'll put away my fishing rod. My hair is not gray. My ears are not deaf. With wine, my face still blushes. But who will share a cup with me? Who will share it with me?" No matter how many beautiful sceneries there would be in the future, there would be no one to share them with.